I have a question for you today. Hello and welcome. My name is Leah Kopke. I'm a 3D motion design freelancer. Have you ever wondered what it would look like for a disco ball to explode? Just keep that question in mind. You'll get to see in a moment why I'm asking, and you can leave this in the comments. Have you exploded something on your computer for an animation? And if so, what did you explode? And was it a personal project? Was it a lot of fun? Or is it for work? I'm super curious. And what tools did you use for it? And there's more than one right way to explode something to get a really cool effect. So I'd love to know. Something I'm considering starting is a live Q&A session where you can ask me anything about Cinema 4D. So let me know if that's something you're interested in, and if so, let me know what day of the week you'd be interested in that being on. Today, we're going to be going over the Explosion Deformer inside of Cinema 4D. So my fellow 3D modelers and animators out there, let's go ahead and get started. So here we are inside of Cinema 4D. And there's a couple things I'd like to do here. We're going to drop in our handy sphere for a moment. And you'll notice this doesn't really look too much like a disco ball. So what we're going to do is we're going to reduce the Phong angle. And by the way, if you're interested in learning about what this Phong tag is and the Phong angle, I'll leave a link to that episode in the description below. For right now, we're just going to reduce this down. And you'll notice that it's no longer being smoothed out, our sphere, and you can actually see the edges on it of the polygons. So you can choose how smooth your edges are looking, and we're going to reduce that to 0. We don't really want any smoothing on this because, again, we are making a disco ball, and you can adjust your number of segments to decide how many segments you would like in here, which is always fun. I may just keep this on the default for right now. And the deformer we're going over today is the Explosion. So here we are. This is it right now. It looks like a little bomb icon. And we can drop that here into our scene. So under Create Deformers, you can find your deformers listed here as well. And you'll see our Explosion Deformer is here. So there's a few different places you can find it. You can also just do your classic Shift-C in order to search for Explosion. And then you can drag and drop this into your scene. Just like that. You can even add it to your interface. We don't need quite that many, so I'm just going to go ahead and drop this into the hierarchy of our sphere. And the reason why I'm doing that is because it won't affect the sphere unless if it's in the hierarchy of it. And we want this to be an exploding disco ball, as we discussed. Now, this doesn't really look like it's shiny like a disco ball, so we'll need to fix that. I'm going to go ahead and do a few things in here. You can see that in my render settings, I'm working within Redshift, and you can do this within other renders too. But what you'll want to do is you're going to want to create a shiny metallic material in whatever you're working in. I'm working on Redshift today, so under our materials, I'm going to select Redshift material, and I'm just going to name this Disco. And now that we have Disco in here, we're going to need to increase the metalness all the way up, and you'll see that this gets real nice and shiny. And if we want to be a little bit more creative with it, we can add like a hint of blue or something to it as well. So I may go ahead inside of my color chooser here and just adjust this to the bluer colors, and we'll have like a little bit of a cooler color to our gray on our disco ball, which I think will be fun. And now we can just drag and drop our material, and you'll see we get a material tag up here, and we've got something that looks a little bit more like a disco ball. Actually going to turn off our grid in our filter, so I'll click on work plane. And now it is gone. I'll also leave a link to the work plane episode in the description. And you'll notice that if I hit render under Redshift, start IPR to preview this, it looks pretty boring. Like, we kind of have this light in here. This is your default light that you're seeing because we don't actually have any lights in our scene. We just have a deformer and a sphere. So we're going to turn off the IPR and add something a little bit more interesting. So click on your asset browser in here, type in HDRI, and this is basically an image you can use to light your scene. Now we need to apply this to a light, and there's a spherical dome light in here, and you can add a material to it. Like right now it's all evenly lit white. We want it to look like there's a party happening a little bit more. Can make it a little bit bigger so you can see which one I'm pointing to. That I think will be fun, but you can really try any one of these you'd like. I'm really interested in this one here, the HDR Light Studio 10 EXR. So I'll go ahead and drag and drop this in here. So here we go. That's a little bit more interesting. If we hit Start IPR, we actually have something that feels a little bit more worth looking at, and we can even rotate it around. Choose an angle that you like. You can even rotate it with the R hotkey. So we could do something like that. And maybe we want to add in a backlight, so I just clicked on a Redshift area light. I'll go ahead and rotate this around using the R hotkey while holding Shift so that I snap to increments of degrees. And that actually, what that does is it enables our quantize, which allows you to snap to increments when moving, rotating, and scaling. I'll also leave a link to the episode that covers all of those settings. I'm going to move this on back here. Now let's preview this again and make our light a little bit bigger. So I'm going to use the T hotkey for scale. And that's a little too intense, so let's take that down a little bit. Gonna drop down the intensity and raise this up. So we're just slightly, ever so slightly, wanting to backlight this disco ball. I'm holding Alt to go down in intensity in increments of 0.1. I think that looks a little bit more interesting. And if you want to animate your sphere, you can do that for sure. We need to rotate the sphere, and we're going to talk about how to explode it. So now we're going to start at 0 frames. So we can hit this button down here to keyframe it in the XYZ position and HPB. This is really for your rotation. So let's first figure out which way our sphere is rotating. I'm going to turn off the IPR for a little bit. So we don't want our disco ball to go that way. That doesn't make sense. That doesn't make sense. That looks a little bit more disco ballish. So let's go ahead and keyframe this one starting at 0. If you hit this, it'll keyframe everything here. But I think it's good practice to get used to keyframing just what you need, because otherwise, when you're doing something complicated like animating a character, it's just everything. You just have too many keyframes and it becomes really complicated unnecessarily. And I've learned that the hard way, so don't do the mistakes that I do and just get into the habit of just keyframing what you need instead of taking the shortcut of keyframing everything at once. So this is 360, and we're going to add that in there. And you'll see that if we start this from the beginning, we do have our disco ball moving. Now it kind of starts and slows down, which is kind of boring. So what we're going to do is, I actually want this to be linear. That way it'll loop, so I'm going to choose linear. Linear keyframes. I need to have both of these selected and change to linear. And now you can see that it is looking better. It's almost moving too fast, so instead of 90 frames, I may give this 300 and just see how that looks, and move this keyframe all the way here. That feels like a nicer pace for a disco ball. Or we could have it speed up and explode, so use your own creativity. You can do whatever you want. But what I want to show you here are the settings for the explosion now that we have this animated for funsies. And in here we can adjust the strength. And that's of course the strength of the explosion. So what you do is you would just keyframe this at the non-explosion state, and then you would keyframe it again whenever you're ready for it to be fully exploded at the 100%, and then you can keyframe it again. But you can really control the look of your explosion here. You can also have this go in reverse from 100% to 0. Or you can have it kind of move to the music. If you had like a beat going, you can do whatever you want. This doesn't really even have to be an explosion. That's just what the name of the tool is. Because while they were creating it, they were thinking of explosions, but you can really do whatever you want. Maybe something is assembling back together. Maybe this disco ball is assembling instead of exploding, like the party's coming together. Maybe the party's gone out of control, and yeah, it exploded. You can decide whatever you want. Now, the speed and angle size kind of controls how things look. So I'm actually going to turn on one of these at a time. We have our angle speed. So as I increase the strength, you'll notice that what this angle speed is controlling is actually the angle of these individual parts. And you can see that it's exploding the individual polygons, because if I turn on our lines, you can see the polygons here. So you can explode that way. And I want to also talk about this end size. So you'll notice that right now when we're at 100%, we can't see it anymore. And that's because of this end size. Now if I increase this, this will adjust the size of our polygons. Now if I make this really big, it looks kind of crazy and everything's intersecting. But that's controlling your end size, so you can decide how small you want things to be. Maybe you don't want them to disappear completely, and this is just right for you. So this angle speed adjusts how quickly these rotate. If you right-click on any of these errors, it will reset it to the default. So right-click on the left arrow sets it back to what it was originally by default in the software. Now let's talk about speed. So speed is the distance this travels when it explodes. So this randomness here is actually controlling how much variation there is between the angle speed and the speed itself. So again, this is the angle. The angle speed is the angle in which it rotates. I'll reduce this a little bit so you can see it. Then this is the distance. So you can see these aren't all moving the same distance, and that's because we have the randomness on. If I turn this off, you can see that they're all going out at the same distance. Same thing with the speed. Now they're rotating the same amount. So you can really decide what looks good to you. I'll set these back at the default for right now. But those are all the settings, and it's really fun to play around with this, of course. And you can get some really crazy, cool looks with this. Just, of course, tons of fun. I mean, I have fun with this inside Cinema 4D. So let's try this. At this point, we're going to keyframe it at 0. At the end of this, actually, I want to make the 0 maybe here. Maybe it explodes at the end. And then at the end, we're going to keyframe this at 100. Then we can hit play. Now that's kind of like a boring looking explosion. So we can even adjust this further with our dope sheet. And in here, we can switch over to the F-curve mode. I'm going to hit the F hotkey, or actually frame all. I think that I meant to hit S. And you'll see, you can see our explosion here. I'd like this to happen like pretty fast, so I'm gonna do this. And you'll see that looks a little bit more explosion-ish. Or maybe we want this to be in slow-mo. Then you can adjust things more like that. I don't know. You can try things out and see what you like. But it's a real fun thing to try out and mess around with. If you'd like to learn more deformers, you can check out the deformer playlist. I also have other playlists covering all the mesh modeling tools. I have another one on simulations and pyro and things like that. So if you want to get more into fiery explosions, you can for sure there. And I'll see you here next time on Ambient 3D Animations.